Good morning. So let's get started. Our speaker today is experienced in compliance management, and she is a seasoned, I would say that seasoned lead assessor for quality management system, environmental management system, including of course occupational health and safety, asset management, anti-bribery management systems. She's also an auditor for that, and including facilities management systems, among many others, ISO standards. And she's living in Singapore for 20 plus years now, and she is the technical and of course certification manager of BV Singapore, one of the biggest certification firms in the world. And here to talk about surviving certification and surveillance audit. Here's Mae Dela Cruz. Ms. Mae, good morning.
Hi, John.
Ms. Mae, how is it going down there in Singapore?
Everything is fine. The circuit breaker controls of the Singapore government is fine, and it's working. You know, we have a lot of incidences of COVID infections, but these are from the dormitories. You know, and if you know, in dormitories, it's really congested. So the infection really spread faster.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about COVID, Ms. Mae. We're here to talk about how do we exactly survive. So most of our participants here, Ms. Mae, are coming from different companies who are getting ready for certification.
Getting ready, yeah.
And they want to hear firsthand from a seasoned, experienced certification auditor like you. We're curious about passing the third-party audit.
Passing the third-party audit. Okay,
yes.
So we will address all this. Okay, I have a few slides, less than 20 slides. Today we have a very interesting topic about surviving an audit, and you have a question on how to pass your certification audits, third-party certification audits with surveillance and certification and recertifications. These are all the components of assessments and from the certifying body point of view. We will talk about how to survive the certification surveillance of the audit, and also we will tell you how third-party certification body works. Like I'm from the third-party certification body, and I'm representing Bureau Veritas certification. So you can see our logo here. Yeah, I'm from Bureau Veritas. So we also have an office there in Manila. All right. Now, how to survive a certification body audits? Okay, survive. When I look at this title, I feel like, oops, I'm from a certification body. I feel like, do we need to buy an armory for our auditees? You know, in order to survive us. So we feel that the auditors are all those people who are inflicting some infections or making things difficult, or of course it's a pressure, you know, whenever you are to face an auditor, whether it's an internal audit or external audit, there is always a psychological pressure. Why? Because all we want is to comply to the requirements of the standard, and we wanted to get certified. Now, I wanted to answer the first question that I have heard, you know, when you are doing the introduction, John. Okay, how to pass, as in PASS, pass the certification body, pass the audit. Okay, let me just point out that for us in layman, as a layman's term, passing, that means we get certified, okay? But let me get it straight. There is no such a thing as passing or failing in the certification body, okay? It is just a matter of how soon you get certified, okay? And how smooth the certification process and assessment process goes. It is not about you don't pass. Did you pass? How many NCs, you know? So the very first time I got introduced for certification, okay, and the version of the standard is in 1980s. 1980s, all right, ladies and gentlemen. So when the first ISO 9000 comes, I even cried during the time I was being audited because I handled the documentation. And to me, it's about really surviving the audit because I feel that I almost died and I resurrected after that. All right, so today I'm going to share with you some of those thoughts that will make you thrive and emerge. It's not about surviving, but for me, it's about emerging from a successful full assessment activity, okay? And when you emerge in this successful assessment activity, that means that activity added value to the organization in terms of implementation and in terms to how you wanted to tell the world how the company is doing, you know, and how you are going to demonstrate the way you will provide products and services to your customers, all right? How to survive. Now, before we talk about who survives and who will be the killer of the survival, okay, let's talk about the audit types. There are 3 audit types that is expressed in the ISO 1911. I saw from your some of your flyers, Jong, that you also talk about ISO 1911. You know, ISO 1911, for everybody to know, this is the standard that we use as a reference for auditing. All right. So there are 3 types of audit process. The first one is the first party audit process. The first party audit process is your very own internal audit. Okay, that means everybody, your IQA, your internal auditors are doing internal audits to prepare your organization for auditing. The next one is the second party audit. When a second party audit, that means your organization has a lot of suppliers that you qualify. So when you perform an audit to your supplier, it is called a second party audit. Now, second party audit is actually those that we can log, and this can be a qualifier for anyone who aspire to be an external auditor in the future. Okay, if you want to be, when you grow up, if you want to be like me, yeah, so those second party audit log is useful for your qualification as a third party auditor. Now, the last part is the third party auditing. Third party auditing is the one that is given by a certifying body like Bureau Veritas, you know, and of course there are a lot of certifying bodies around our friendly competitors. Okay, yeah, because I do not know whether this will be posted. I do not want to to put in our competitor's name here, you know, yeah. Okay, so audit types, these are all the audit types, and when all of us are engaged in this auditing, it's either your role is an auditor or an auditee. The auditor is the one who performs the assessment against criteria, and the auditee is the one who demonstrates compliance to those criteria. Okay, I hope we are clear on the context of our roles in the audits. Now, certification body performs an assessment to you. Certification bodies are also being audited, maybe more often than you are being audited. All right, so the references or the criteria that are being used to us when we are audited by our accreditation body, like UCAS. UCAS is one of the most prominent accreditation body. We also have ANAB as an accreditation body. In Singapore, we have the SAC, or the Singapore Accreditation Council, and in the Philippines, we also have the PAB. All right, so these accreditation bodies, normally, they must use the ISO IEC 17021, okay, the 2015 version now, and there are a series of these 17021 requirements that is being used by accreditation bodies in order to accredit a certification body like Bureau Veritas. All right, and then there are also some mandatory documents that are being used, and CBs or certification bodies like Bureau Veritas needs to comply to all these mandatory requirements in order for us to issue a certificate to you. Otherwise, your certificate, if it is not accredited, it doesn't have, okay, it has a value, okay, but it will have more value if it is accredited, all right? Yeah, and also we have these ISO standards, which we use for certifying companies like your organization. Okay, so now, how do we so-called survive in this assessment? What do we need to take note as an accreditation body? Again, as I mentioned, as an accreditation or certifying body, we are also being audited. Like you are also being audited. It's just a matter of we use different criteria for the assessments. Okay, the assessment is just getting enough evidence of compliance to the requirements. Evidence of compliance so that we are able to attest that your organization is certified through a certain standard. Okay, we get enough objective evidences of compliance to the requirements. We are not, it's not the purpose to get enough non-conformities, gaps in your implementation. That is not the objective of the assessment. But if there are some gaps that has been identified, or so-called, we raise it as a non-conformity or an observation, that is not the sign that, oops, in Singapore they say, oops, die, mati, you know, so we fail. It's not true, because it's a matter of how you correct this non-conformity properly according to the 1911. Now, what are the things that you will need to take note, you know, to take care of in order for you to have a very successful audit activity in your assessment? First of all, your processes. When we are audited or you are audited, the process belongs to you. It doesn't belong to any third party. If I am going to go to your organization and perform an assessment, I do not know your processes. I will know your processes when I prepare the audit. But who owns the process? Who knows the process? It's you. So who gets the higher survival if this is an ocean of processes? Maybe I die first because I do not know your process. Do you know that the auditors, when they enter your organization, when during my younger days, I am an external auditor. Knock, knock, who's there? It's Mae Dela Cruz from Bureau Veritas Certification. I'm going to conduct an audit. Do you know how nervous I am? How nervous are we when we come to your organization? Why? Because, yeah, we know your processes. We know that it exists. You know, you have your inspection process, fabrication process, inspection process, mixing process, chemical testing process. We know that this exists, but the nitty-gritty things about your processes belongs to you, and you are an expert for that. Please take note, okay, that this is what you need to know about your processes. And about your processes, you need to know a lot of things about that, and I will show you how we integrate the requirements of the standard in your processes in order for you to be more confident in the assessment process. Next point, your resource. When you have your processes, definitely it's not only the procedure, how you do it, you incorporate all your resources all together in order for you to have an output, right? In order for you to have an output. Hold on for a second. Huh? Let me just do something. Sorry, my battery okay. Some technical problem. I'm also the IT here. Yeah. All right. So are you able to see my screen? Yes, John? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So your resources. When you have a process, definitely you've got to have your resources in order for you to have an output. Okay, so these are your systems. You need to incorporate all this in your systems in order for you to present the process and your organization to the assessment. Now, definitely we have the requirements. What are these requirements? Number one is your ISO standard. ISO standard, the standard that you will use or the one that you are eyeing for in terms of the certification. In terms of the requirements, there are other requirements that are incorporated in this. If you have the ISO 9000, there are other requirements, like your objectives, your customer requirements. If there are statutory requirements required for the product before it goes out of your organization, then it's also part of those requirements. If you are having your organization certified to environmental management systems, there are also other requirements that are incorporated to it. More so, if you are talking about health and safety management systems, the more you have statutory legal requirements and other legal requirements that are known internationally, because if you are having your products, exported, exported around the globe, you will need to comply to all those requirements. Otherwise, your product may not be able to enter, the particular country, because every country will have their own particular requirements. So please take note of this. Your processes, all your processes from the very beginning, from the start of the process to the output, to the destination, to the shipping of your product. These are all your process, and it doesn't end there. Okay, there may be some follow-ups when your product received by the user, and then you have all these process for after-sales service. Okay, after-sales service, if you are dealing with consumer products and they are binded by, what do you call that? It's, warranty. Yeah, if they are binded by the warranty, it's also part and parcel of the process. Okay, so it depends on how simple and how complicated is your process. So your resources will come together with it. All right, but the requirements remains the same unless the authority or the technical people who owns the requirements change those requirements. But your processes are yours. It may be dynamic based on the market need. It's a market-driven requirements. All right, your resources will go according to these processes. So I hope we are clear on this. Once you know all this, the chances of survival is high. It's as simple as, are you a swimmer? If you say, no, I'm not a swimmer, okay, I will push you in the swimming pool, or even the swimming pool that is 3 meter or 1 meter high. You get scared. Why? Because you are not confident. But now, let's go back to our swimming pool. The swimming pool is my slide now, okay? You have your processes, you have your, not the tuxedo, but your two-piece. You have your swimming trunks. You have all your gadgets, and you are a swimmer. Do you think you can survive? Definitely. All right? So these are the things that you have to take note. Now, I give you, this is my very, very personal and very, very favorite presentation ever since the time I am doing training and teaching auditors. Okay? Because most of the time when you are, for the first time, you are an auditor. When I was an auditor for the first time, I told you I cried because I don't even know how to perform an audit. I don't even know what questions to ask. Okay, so maybe John can help you with that. Okay, when you want to get trained as an auditor. But let me give you this very favorite subject of mine, and this is the chart that I always use. Okay, the moment I realized that I am a swimmer in terms of ISO assessment. I realized that I need to get this imaginary chart, okay? And I don't keep this for myself, because for me, in my experience, I wanted to share this to you, and that this is no secret, okay? You just need to apply your wits and your wisdom on this chart, okay? What you need to do is to erase everything that I have here and then do it on your own, in your own process. Okay, let's put it together. The previous chart that I mentioned to you, you own your process, isn't it? Correct? You own your process, and therefore, on this particular slide, you have this process, the set of your interrelated and interacting activity within your organization that transforms your inputs to output. Any process, like for example, purchasing process. What is the input for purchasing process? Of course, the requisitions, the approved requisitions. All right. What is the output? The purchased product. What are your controls? Here in the controls, okay, here in the controls, you are able to identify, do we have a procedure? In the procedure, what are the forms that is needed? Are the forms, who are the approvers? All right. So these are the controls. Now, your resources. What are your resources in purchasing? Yourself, your computer, you even have your system, purchasing system. Yeah, you have Navision, you have, you know, all kinds of system, the civil system, procurement system, whatever it is, you know, or you have a manual system. That is also called a system. All right, this supports your process. Now, in terms of the requirements of complying to the standard, we have to see the process effectiveness. When we say process effectiveness, we talk about the extent by which your planning, your procedures, and the intent of the process is achieved without a problem, without any issues, without any concerns. You know, when you are buying a product, if you are a purchaser, when you are buying a product, do you need to go for a novena, pray for the supplier? I need to pray for the supplier so that the product will come on time, so that my production will not be on downtime. If that is the scenario, that means your process, the defined process, and the controls are not effective. Okay, I'm not saying we don't need to pray, okay, but God will tell you, hello, yeah, I give you mercy, but I will give you wisdom in order for you to standardize your controls. Okay, so the extent by which the planned activities are realized, that means you need to define your process, you need to define your controls, what are the forms that needs to be duly signed on time, what is the timeline, okay, what are the KPIs for the process, right? And from there, these KPIs is actually used by your management in order to check the process efficiency. Even if your management, top management, is not looking at the process efficiency, isn't it that if you are a purchaser and the materials that is needed in the production is not yet there, then you are the first person who get nervous, okay? You cannot sleep. 24 hours, you are monitoring your supplies from China or elsewhere, okay? So that is an example of a process, input, output, the controls, your resources, and the requirements. Later on, we will talk about how the requirements of the ISO comes in to this picture. This picture, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, is very, very important. This is something very, very close to my heart. And this is something very, very important to me. And there are a lot of auditors, even the young auditors that I have mentored, and they are auditors right now. Some of them are MRs in some companies. Okay, I have shared this with them, and they told me that if you are a new auditor, this is something very, very effective because you are able to visualize individual process. I gave you an example, is a purchasing process. What other processes? Then you just need to erase that purchasing process here, changes with something else. Okay, production process. In your production process, you have a lot of many different process, you know, that is integrated in the production process. Number one in the production process, if there are some people here from production, you know, you have your production planning, okay? Production planning and material preparations. These are two different processes by themselves, but it belongs to production process. So some pitfalls, you know, some mistakes. Sometimes we tend to lump together all the processes. We tend to lump together all these processes, okay? But I'm not saying that you overdo the definition of every steps in your process. That's why in the very beginning of the ISO 9000, there are levels of documentations. The first level of the documentations, you have your procedure, the general procedure, and you dissect it into work instructions. Okay, now the standard tells you to be practical. Okay, last time the standard ISO 9000 is not practical because there is this saying, write what you do and do what you write. I don't know how many of you have that notion, you know, of the ISO 9000 at the moment. Jong is very young. I know, yeah. Jong can be my son. This is my son. Yeah, but last time during the first introduction of ISO 9000, it always says that write what you do and do what you write. Okay, is that practical during that time? Because everything about ISO 9000 is every evidence is about document. Okay, those are the expected evidences. But I'm not saying that the documents are not necessary for ISO 9000. It is still very necessary because in the consistency of the process, you need this documentation. Okay, so again, coming back to your process entails you to define your procedures, even work instructions as needed. That means you will need to decide whether how much documentation will you need to support this particular process. Okay, every process is important, and every process, as long as it runs smoothly, yeah, it will give you a chance to be successful, you know, in your assessment. Okay, this is the third point. Your requirements. I will assume that most of you, those who are coming for certification, is either ISO 9000, is either Environmental Management System certification, or Health and Safety Management certification under ISO 45000. Okay, and for these three standards, even if you talk about ISO 55000, the Asset Management System, Facilities Management System, even the BCMS. Okay, BCMS is our Business Continuity Management System. I'm also an auditor for that. 50K, your energy management systems. Okay, yeah. So all these, as long as they are in the ISO family, ISO 9000 standard family, okay, they follow this Annex SL. All right, so from section 4 to section 10, these are all the auditable requirements of the standard. You need to incorporate this to the previous slides. All right, so once you have identified your process, your controls, and your requirements, you need to nitty-gritty identify the requirements of this standard that is compatible to every single requirements with these controls. Okay, like I give you an example, resources. What are your resources? Later on, we will talk about what are your resources. Resources are human resource, your building infrastructures, your tools. Okay, so where do you find it? In this Annex SL. Okay, you can find it definitely in the support. and somehow in the operations. Okay, and then you can interlink this with the context of your organization and in your leadership. I will tell you why it's in the leadership. Yes, because in leadership, it is your top management who will need to declare and demonstrate their support in providing resource. Okay, so this is an example of how you use that chart that I have given to you, and how you make use of the standard requirements in order for you to do a self-assessment whether you are able to demonstrate your compliance to any of your auditors, whether it is internal or it is an external audit. All right, remember, it's from section 4 to section 10. These are the auditable requirements of the standard. Now, you are an auditor, external auditor or an internal auditor, or you are doing a self-assessment. That is an assessment, that is an audit, no matter who are doing the assessment. Okay, what do you need to see? What is the objective of the assessment? It's confirming effective implementation of your management system. If you are for ISO 9K, EMS, or health and safety management system, or whatever management systems that you are that you need to get certified for, okay, the outputs needs to be sampled. Again, you imagine the previous slide that I showed you, right? The outputs. Okay, so now you need to see consistency in the outputs. How consistent? Oh, pare-pareho sila ng mukha. Yeah, everything meets your requirements, meets your standard. It meets your specification. If it is a product standard, it has to meet its tolerance band. That means there is a consistency in it. When there is a consistency in the output of the product, there is a consistency, therefore, in the operational implementation, right? If it is an assembly, that means the assembly process is consistent. That's why you have a consistent product. Next is the conformity with documented procedures. You can only have a consistency when the documented procedure is followed. There is no shortcuts. If there are some shortcuts, you need to make sure that why there is a shortcut. Is there an unnecessary process that I have defined in my implementation? Then go on and evaluate for continual improvement. That's why we always have this complementary Six Sigma process, okay? So that you can make your process lean and simple. Because if you already, it's my experience, you know, I came from manufacturing. My experience is manufacturing. Sometimes we define our OSG, our operational standard guide. And yet again, when you do a process audit, you see, how come my operators is having a shortcut? And there are operators, 2 or 3 operators that are doing the same thing. We learn from our operators. We review our operation standard guide. And then from there, you can see an improvement. Why? Again, operators own the process. Okay? Remember what I have said initially? You own the process, but in your organization, there are some segments in your organization, the roles and responsibilities are different. So here in the documented procedures, conformity for the documented procedures, you don't get angry when the documented procedures are not followed. You need to analyze why it's not followed. Is there a simple way of defining the procedures, okay, that it will entail consistency at the end of the day. All right. Then when they follow the conformity with the documented procedures, it entails, and the objective is to conformance to the requirements, all the requirements within that particular process. If there is a specification that is there, you know, if it is a manufacturing process, it has to be complied. If there is an objective or KPI that has been set for the process, it has to be complied. If these objectives are not being complied, for example, the defect rates are getting higher, or the lead time, the expected lead time for supplier or the supply chain is getting longer. That means these objectives are not being met. Why? So we will need to go back again to the chart that I have shown you, the process, and analyze the process, analyze whatever it is in that process that is wanting. It can be the resource, it can be the procedure, it can be, the resource can be, if you are a supplier, it can be, are you outsourcing it? Where are you sourcing your raw material? Why there is a longer period of delivery? Can you localize the source? Okay, so these are all continual improvement initiatives that you can incorporate in this effective implementation of your system. All right, if you have a question, please jot them down. Later, we will address all those questions accordingly. All right, next point. These are some do's and don'ts, and these are the things that you need to ponder about so that you are able to change something or to improve something in the implementation. Number one, when we talk about your process, definitely there are some resource, right? And this resource includes manpower, and your manpower is in your organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Okay, so these are actually required in our ISO 9000 in the Annex SL. Okay, so these responsibilities and authorities has to be defined, not only defined, communicated and understood. Do not come to that scenario wherein, okay, you are head of the department, you have defined all the procedure, and then when you talk to one of your admin, she didn't do, what is expected in the procedure, because she is not aware that she is supposed to do that responsibility. Okay? Yeah. So we make sure that these roles and responsibilities are defined, they are clear, communicated, and understood. And then we are able to set a KPI in terms of that. This is a common weakness in terms of the ISO implementation. Okay, is a risk-based process approach. When the ISO 9001-2008 version was changed to ISO 2015 version, what is emphasized is the risk-based process approach, risk-based thinking approach in terms of implementation, in terms of auditing, isn't it? Right? Okay, so now I am incorporating this to the effective change management process, because this is commonly, this is a common weakness in terms of the implementation, because sometimes we also do not define at what extent of the changes do we need to incorporate the risk management process, the R&O process, the risk and opportunities process. If you will ask me based on my experience, okay, so any change I will evaluate, okay, but whether I will put it in a proper risk assessment or generalize it, it will be my call. All right, but any change, mind you, in a in aerospace business or even in a shipping business, if there are some change even in the bushing or in the gadgets, you think that this small screw is actually not very significant. But actually, some of those disasters long time ago are caused by all these simple and minor change. Okay, so I'm not saying that your management system will have a breakdown just because of minor or very, very minor change. Okay, but I'm telling you that if there are some changes in the management process, please look at it, and evaluate it, whether it has to go through a proper R&O process or it's the effect is negligible, yeah, or is negligible to the effectiveness of your processes. Next point. Okay, so I think Jong, you have a special training program about this. Yeah. Okay. So this is something very, very important, my dear friends. Okay. Work out the CAPA properly, the corrective action and preventive action processes. Sometimes we have this notion where, okay, I have a problem, I have a non-conformity. How do I address this? Okay, client already, they're already smiling. I have corrected the problem. But is that the correct way, you know, of addressing the CAPA properly? The CAPA administration has its components that is required by our continual improvement process under that Annex SL. Okay, so it requires you to do a proper reporting, the statement, the root cause analysis, the verification, the validation, and recording all the actions that has been done. Okay, those that is the common weakness. Again, sometimes we get the record, okay, and then we get confused about this requirement and document control. Oh, okay, for 6 years we disposed the record. You know, that is the definition. So I'm just showing you that all these requirements are woven together, you know, in order for you to have a very stable management system. When you have a CAPA that you have closed properly, you need to record, and you have to have a history of the lessons learned. This is a common weakness, lessons learned, so that there will be no repetitive incidents, you know, relevant to this. Yeah, it doesn't happen, you know, or we can even learn, and you can even share these lessons learned, you know, from any departments or even your suppliers, so that they can work together with you. Lessons learned. This is something very, very, very important. When I was in manufacturing, okay, in my engineering departments, okay, we changed people. After 6 years, they say that, okay, this particular non-conformity happened again. And then one of the oldest production operator, he was telling us a history. Oh, in this year, actually this same thing happened. So our question is, why it came back? Why it came back? Okay, and why we didn't know? We are caught off guard of it. All right, so it is important when we have this CAPA. CAPA will not kill us. CAPA is not an indication of weakness. Of course, it's an indication of weakness in the process, but you have to emerge and build your CAPA methodology properly in order for you to always seek the continual improvement through your CAPA and the resilience of the process, and also those lessons learned, so they don't repeat themselves. Okay, and if they repeat themselves again, you know what to do. That's the most important thing. You know what to do. Okay, you don't repeat the cycle for the CAPA. This is something very, very important, and this is also something very, very close to me. Not because I have a lot of non-conformity or issued a lot of non-conformities in my audit life, but this is we take this, you know, in our daily life. You know, I think this is something very, very useful, and this is also something very, not only useful, but this is always adding value, you know, to our lives and also to our processes. Coming back to that chart again with your resource, focus on employee training and their effectiveness. Okay, so you train people. In the requirements of the standard, even in the old standard, when you train, you record, you also validate the effectiveness. Why? You need to know whether the training is effective. Even after this, I don't know whether what I have said here, you know, is effective enough. There is no measure. But in your implementation, there got to be a measure. Measure meaning, have you retained some knowledge, organizational knowledge? Have you retained that? Is there an awareness? You know, people get aware, but of course the retention period of the learners, you know, it's not our control, okay? But it will be in your control if you are the trainer, if you are in your company who performs the training, because you need to have a follow through. you need to verify and validate whether these competencies are maintained within the organization, retention of knowledge within the organization. Okay, so that a lot of companies, normally this is an issue, because they don't see the ROI whenever they, of course, there is an expenditure, there is a budget for this, for the resource, right? Training is an expensive exercise as well. Okay, so but if you want to realize the returns of this investment, you capitalize on the retention of the knowledge and the retention and maintenance of competency in the organization. And this is where you can tell your top management that, hey, this is the potential returns of the training. When we engage Jong for the training, this is what you will get. Okay? Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, whatever you do for training, your objective is to retain that knowledge. It doesn't matter whether you forget about the trainer, you forget about me, as long as you retain the knowledge, even one single knowledge that is shared to you in this session. I think that is important, and that has a bearing. Okay. Next point, appropriate resources, not limited to the following. Okay, so this is a requirement even in section 5 of the standard, the commitment of the top management to provide the resource. How are you able to get a good product if you don't have a reliable resources, in order for you to have your output? Number one is the personnel. Of course, for the personnel, you need to, I'm not saying you hire a person that is not suitable. From the time that you are hiring the person, okay, you already have a plan for that person. Planning to train, or if you don't plan to train, you hire the person with experience. If there are some gaps in, you are assigning or transferring, or even transferring. Nowadays, we are in a world wherein you do everything, Last time, the Tide advertisement, you are all around. Okay, so when you have this personnel and you are intending to have a rotation, job rotation, you make sure that the personnel is competent enough in the job description. How you define your competency is up to you. Okay, so you can develop a metrics, competency defined as the know-how in terms of the procedure. If it is an operator, the know-how in terms of she can do all the job, she can do at least 4 process out of 10, okay, and then you rate them. This is also one example of addressing this resource under personnel. Okay, definitely it's a number of personnel to facilitate the output and their competency. The next point is the materials. What are the material requirements? Is there a material requirements in terms of the process from the input to the output? Is there a requirement for the materials? What kind of materials? Where will you source the material? What kind of specifications are there, that is required? Okay, what kind of materials commitment do you have in terms of your customer requirements? So, or are you able to decide on the characteristics of the materials, alternative materials, the sources of your materials? These are the things that you need to talk about in terms of resource. Sometimes in the resource planning, you think that it is very simple. This one HR process, okay, maybe not so important. No, my dear friends, this is something very, very, very important. Okay, the next point is a budget. Definitely, there are a lot of companies. Last time when I was in, oh no budget, this one, I heard this, and I still remember, in one manufacturing manufacturing plant, they say, those maintenance, they say my role. What is, describe your role to me? Ma'am, bumubuhay po ako ng patay. Huh? So, sorry for, just to break the ice. Ma'am, bumubuhay po ako ng patay, ha? What do you do? You know, no, because the equipment is already dead, but I need to keep it alive. I kick it, you know, I do everything. But why is that so, you know? Yeah, again, this links to when I learned the asset management process. Okay? When I learned the asset management process, okay, itong mga bumubuhay ng patay, okay, we need them in the asset management process. Why? Asset management process looks at your budget, you look at your resource, you look at the financial resources of the organization in terms of the needed assets for the it's not about the materials, but it is the major equipment that is needed in the production, and how you take care of it, and how you lengthen the lifespan. And the lifespan, even if you lengthen them, the amount of output and the effectiveness and the efficiency remains the same. Okay? And then there is also a validation of the data, you know, that will support your claim to the management that, boss, I do not need to keep this alive because this is already dead. Okay? If I will keep this alive, this is how much we are going to spend. But we need a new replacement for this equipment. Sometimes we don't get heard that the equipment needs to be changed. Why? Because we just tell them, you know, the story, you know, how you keep the how you keep the equipment alive. It's dead, but you know, you keep on repairing and repairing. But we need to put all this into a budgetary data. You know, how much you spend for calibration, how much you spend for replacement of parts, how much you spend for repairs, etc. Okay, so again, coming back to the budget, this budget is actually linked to everything from your provision of training, the materials that you need to procure, and then your infrastructure, tools, and equipment.
Ms. Mae?
Yes, please, John.
Sorry to interrupt you here, but I think this is really common. I think this is running at the back of the heads of our participants here. By the way, most of them are coming from government agencies, and so we have a DNR here.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is a very good topic right here. What are common non-conformances when it comes to, you know, these resources, personal materials, budget, so that they can prepare for that? What are your common, you know, audit findings here, if I may ask that?
Okay, so if you look at the we look at the we look at this Annex SL. Okay, again, every time we will raise a non-conformity, okay, it's not based on the experience of the auditor, but it should be based and linked to the specific requirements of the standard. All right, so now if you look at the support, you have all the trainings, infrastructures, etc., awareness, right? You also have your operational requirements, and you also have the leadership. In the leadership, there is this element there in the ISO 9000 for the provision of resources. Okay, now, how do you raise, at what condition where a non-conformity will be raised? Okay, normally during the performance evaluation of the operation, okay, you will find the evidence of non-compliance in the operation. For example, you find, okay, so government agency. For example, I relate this with my audit in the, because I'm auditing the bus and train services here in Singapore. Okay, I will relate into that. We check in the operation, there is this equipment that has a label, under maintenance. Okay, so as an auditor, or even an internal auditor, under maintenance, what do you need to ask? You need to probe how long this equipment been in maintenance. What is the use of this equipment? Is this equipment important? Does this equipment created a downtime? Okay, and what are the losses during the time this equipment has been dead.
All right.
Okay. From there, you link it up to the many requirements from Section 5, the support, operation, and even performance evaluation. Okay. Again, you know, Jong, I heard you when you are teaching. You say, pick up the jackpot, the jackpot clause.
You remember
Yeah.
that?
You see, I'm listening to you. I'm picking it up. You know, you pick up the jackpot clause. That means the jackpot clause is not, you know, who jackpot, you get excited when you see a non-conformity. No, you pick up the clause that is closer to the identified evidence of non-compliance. Okay, so in this is a very classical example of resource management and non-conformities for this. Okay, I have a recent non-conformity that was raised to, okay, I cannot say the okay, this is about a training institution. Okay, raise a non-conformity. Why? Because I have seen records of one responsibility, accountability is one position. This person has been hired 2 years ago. Okay, and he is supposed to be let's say a maintenance a maintenance engineer. Okay, so I have raised a non-conformity in terms of effectiveness of training. Why? Because the person was hired 2 years ago, and the person is still an observer for 2 years. Okay, is there an effectiveness of the training? So when I look at the training process, the training program for this person, there is a learning curve that they have defined for 6 months. Okay, and then there is no follow-up in terms of the training. So this is also part of the resource. So you see, now it goes to the jackpot clause of Section 7 in terms of competency. So it depends on which segment of the process you are looking at in order for you to identify which clause you are using for the compliance, and then you can raise the non-conformity accordingly, or you can improve accordingly based on the requirements under this Annex SL. Of course, this Annex SL will have the nitty-gritty requirements in the ISO 9000, right? Okay, so do not forget, you start from this, okay, in your analysis. Actually, what I do, I have a A3 paper, the biggest paper that I can have, even the Manila paper last time. I have this, I draw the process, and then I write down what are my resources, what are my controls, what are the procedures, did I miss any procedure? From there, I can visualize my entire process. Of course, the effectiveness and the efficiency of the process, it belongs to you, because this you will need to apply your know-how of the standard in your process. But this area here, okay, you can actually visualize this according to how much you know your process. That's why I say this is your survival kit. Okay, I will be drowned first, but I will not, because I'm a swimmer. This will be your gadget, yeah. If I'm a swimmer, then I don't have a swimwear with me. I am naked. Definitely, I will cover my eyes, right? Then I drown. Again, it comes back to confidence. Okay, how you get your confidence? Knowing your process, knowing your controls, knowing your resources, plus be familiar with the requirements of the standard. Okay, so I hope, Jong, I answered that question with some examples.
That is a jackpot answer, by the way. So
jackpot, yeah, okay. I charge you later. We hit the jackpot. I claim my prize. Yeah, my prize is when everybody learns from me, yeah, and you have a takeaway from me from here. All right,
Ms. Mae, so just to really clarify, when it comes to resources, performance is an indicator as to whether we have the adequate resources or not. Right?
Yes, performance, yes.
So even when it comes to budget, let's say, for example, I think there's one question here from Jason. If there are
Please.
budgetary issues and that affects performance, would that be a non-conformance?
No, not directly, unless unless there is a proof that, okay, you need, you know, you are a purchaser, but you are a new purchaser, and you are assigned as a purchaser, but you don't have your own station. You are sharing. This one can be a clear-cut non-conformity.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will be linked to the budget. Okay, but it's a non-conformity against Section 7. You don't link it to your Section 5, you know, your leadership. Of course, the corrective action will link to the commitment of the top management to provide a resource, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't raise a non-conformity against that Section 5 and you just say that there is no commitment from the top management to provide this resource, because you will need to justify that claim. What if that section did not raise a formal PO, right? And then you get excited that, oh, because there is no budget. Because sometimes for us, there is always a sensitivity when we talk about budget. Remember that, okay? But again, you use this thing of finding the jackpot requirement, okay, that is linked to the issue or the non-conformity that you want to look at. And of course, if the root cause is the budget, then you need to highlight that, you know, in terms of the corrective action. And I think that will add value to the process. All right. I hope I answered that question. This is something very, very sensitive, Jong. You know, when it talks about budget, you know. Right. Yeah. In any company, even if it is government or any company, this is something very, very sensitive. Okay, so we have to be very careful, and we need to be spot on in terms of the evidences that we need to raise accordingly. Okay. Anyway, these budget are all linked to training. You know, this person is untrained. Why? Because no budget, right? This equipment. You know, I became you know, what is that? The person, you know, last time when I was young is Madame Elma, no? You know, you are dead, but you become alive, something like that. Yeah. So if your equipment is dead and then you make it alive, you know, why? Because no budget. Yeah. Maybe it's not true. Okay. So you need to go back again, the principle of asset management. You need to justify the data that you have. How much is buying a new equipment compared to the repair, and replacement? You just buy a new equipment. Nowadays, it's easier to get it that way. Okay, so you use your internal audit and your know-how of the requirements in order for you to raise that up to the management. And that will add value to you. Okay, if you have more questions, you can raise it to Jong, and then maybe Jong can ask me. I'm okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Any other question on the budget and the infrastructure? Then we link it up to the service provider. Huh? Yeah. Any more question on this?
I think this one last. I think this is an observation though. Jason again is saying that if he hires a skilled personnel or a skilled worker, and so that he can save, will this be, say, a point for resources? Can this be, say, can this earn points when it comes to resources? Like they have skilled workers.
Of course. Of course, the answer is yes, but it depends on why you need to hire a skilled worker. For example, you are in your process, you have a lifting equipment that is controlled legally, you know, and then you need a skilled worker for that, the operator for a particular equipment. This is our skilled worker. If you need a welder, these are also skilled worker. All right. So if that requirement for a skilled worker is justified because of the process requirement, then that is the management doesn't have a choice but to provide a budget to hire that particular skilled worker, because that skill is you know is already within that person, because it's a certified, you know, the person needs a certified competency, you know, whether it's external or internal. Even if it is given internal, you also spend money, you know, within the time frame for getting the awareness or the competency required by that position. Okay, so again, it's a matter of how you justify that I need a budget for this because these are the steps that I need to go through, and this is the cost. Nowadays, my dear friends, this is for every one of you. You need to incorporate the cost, the dollar sign, in every aspect of your process. Every aspect of the process has an equivalent dollar sign. Time is also money. When you conduct, even if you're in your warehouse, you know, last time I'm doing you know, I work in a manufacturing company where we have a warehouse. When you share a warehouse to warehouse, there is a cost there, you know. Yeah, because when you hire a warehouse to store your products, there is a particular cost in there. So think about this. So that's why nowadays, I don't recall when I'm teaching last time for the ISO 9000, then this budget, I include this budget. No, I don't. Last time it's just the resource. I have the equipment, all this, you know. But nowadays, no. I encourage you to put a dollar sign in every step of, you know, of course, not every step that you walk through your is a dollar sign, you know. Yeah, but every significant step and every significant process in the organization has its own value, a dollar value, you know. And this is sometimes not realized by most implementers. Yeah, I only realized this when I started to teach asset management system, asset management process, and I incorporate this not only in those assets where we have higher value. I incorporate this even if I implement ISO 9000, and it worked, and it's working because you are realizing, hey, I have a lot of retained documents for my maintenance, you know, the history of this equipment, you know, the history of equipment. Okay, I gave this to you as a points to, if you want to implement, you can implement, you know. Yeah, you know, your every equipment or every tool has their own record and birth certificate from the time you buy them, from the time you calibrate, repair, maintain, you know. So everything is there, you know. So the moment you are seeing, you know, hey, how come this is thicker than the than the equipment number one, you know. So that entails money, my dear friends, because every single repair that you do, you know, so you actually record those replacements. How much are those replacements? And once you have that, then it is always easier for you to tell the management, hey, when it's budgetary, you know, the replacement process, I think this is high time to consider this process. Okay, so that is another example. I have a lot of examples, you know. We can end up tomorrow if I give you a lot of examples for that. But those are classical examples. Another example that I just recently I applied, you know, changing of laptops for everyone. My company has given me a list, you know, who needs to change a laptop. Okay, because all the laptops of my auditors are all very, very old, you know. Yeah, because they are still working. So how do you decide? People will say, me first. But if I don't have the record, you know, to justify that, okay, this has to be replaced first and second, then people will get angry with me. Oh, this is your auditor A Jason is your favorite. That's why you replace his equipment first. Okay, so now I'm talking about me as a superior. Okay, but what about your top management? The top management is also convinced. I showed him these are the records. These are the records of complaints about the laptop, and that's why we won. They say, okay, change. Okay. Yeah, yeah, because of money, cost, budget. All right.
From what I gather here, Ms. Mae, when it comes to, because we're talking about resources, you emphasize on asset management. Asset management, for the information of our viewers today, is another standard. It is ISO 55. Isn't that correct?
ISO 55K, yes, yes.
Yes, ISO 55,000. And this is something that you can look into.
They can look into it. Yeah, in Singapore, it's quite popular right now because it gave them a lot of savings and also a very structured decision-making implementation in terms of scrapping, in terms of changing equipment, and in terms of extending life cycles of equipment. That is important. Yeah. So those, all right. Yeah. Any other issues we can talk about the asset management separately. Yeah, when there is a need. Okay. The last point here in the resource, okay, is your relationship with service provider. I know that in the Annex SL, this is tackled in the requirements of Section 8. Okay, under operations, but this is still part of your relationship with your resources, because if you depend highly on you are outsourcing processes and it will affect your output, then you will need to have a link, for this and consider your service providers as part of the resource. Okay, although the control is under Section 8 of the Annex SL under operations. Okay, so this is a very interesting topic. Last time, resource is not, okay, it's given. If you want to have an operation, you have a package of the resource, but there are nitty-gritty things that we do not know how these resources affect us, and the effectivity of how we perform our job and our certification. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mae.
Yeah. All right. You're welcome. Okay. The next point, effective document control system. Effective document control system, not a system of documentation. Is an effective document control system, and not a the system of documentation. Okay, because here we talk about practicality in terms of documenting your management systems. Practicality in terms of what needs to be documented, what needs to be there, and what needs to be, okay, so it's good to have, but may not be that important. Okay, so the effective document control system is starts from, if you look at the Section 7.5, it starts from, I think you also have a training program for this, Jong. I saw that, the effective way of doing document controls. Okay, this is something very, very important in terms of certification, because if I know that in any assessment, there is always this panic button. Okay, the moment you see your auditor, you panic. Right? You panic. But again, you know your process. And part of the process is your proper document control system. You know where to find. You are familiar with the process. You know how you find the record. Even if you are not very familiar with the hundreds and thousands of records, if you have a very effective document control system, then it is easier for you to manage the audit properly, and even to manage your systems and your process properly, no matter how big or small is the process. So this is also something very, very important to take note of. Okay, so there are some good practices for this. There are also there are some effective ways of doing this, some examples of this: color coding, traceability of documentations. Okay, so how we incorporate this in our daily implementation, then it's I have just did that, in cleaning up our documentation system in certification. Okay, yeah, because time will come, everything, your record nowadays is e-documentation, isn't it? Right? Okay, and the common weakness is not a mistake, So these folders in your system becomes a dumping ground. Oh, this one I need it. Okay, But without a proper, effective document control system, time will come that that particular folder becomes a dumping ground. And when you need a particular record, you are unable to find it. Okay, this is a continual improvement that I have done because I have just been audited by UCAS. You know what happened to me? I panic. Why? I am searching for that email just one single email correspondence, but we changed from Lotus Notes to Microsoft. Okay, so I cannot find that email correspondence. So we are people of that kind of habit. Our evidences are from emails. So that happened to me.
Ms. Mae, good thing you mentioned that. You know, in the midst of this pandemic and this health emergency, how will the audit be? If that's going to be virtual, are we going to retrieve documents, say, in 1 minute? And if we couldn't produce it, would that be a point against us?
It may. Even if you are not doing a virtual audit or a remote audit, okay? It may be an issue of document control. Remember, there is this requirement in Section 7, okay? It's about the retrieval. It did not define the time you retrieve, but your auditor can sense, you know, if you have a good auditor, okay, they ask you to retrieve this kind, okay? So in my UCAS audit, this is what happened. They asked me to retrieve that kind of, this specific communication. I cannot find it. No matter what I do, I cannot find it, okay? Of course, the auditor asked me for other records, and other records I can retrieve, okay? Okay, only this particular record that I cannot retrieve, but I was able to retrieve after they closed the session for that, for document control. You know, my assistant was able to do something with my Lotus Notes, and I was able to retrieve that. Okay, but they find it as a it's not a non-conformity, but they park it as something to look into, you know. So because in the accreditation audit, it is only a non-conformity and concerns.
Okay.
Okay, the classification is non-conformity and concerns. Unlike for certifying body, right? You have OFI, you have observation, you have non-conformity, major and minor. So that is what will happen to the document control system if you are unable to retrieve especially during the remote. Of course, the remote, in the remote audit, you can have a lot of, I'm not saying you use alibis, but it's understandable, of course, during the remote audit that sometimes some equipment doesn't work, your Wi-Fi is weak. This is understandable. That's why in the remote audit process, there is a, you know, our certifying body has this requirement for us to justify whether you have tested your ICT before the audits. Okay, so that is a point to take notes. All right.
I was just about to raise that issue where, you know, internet might be slow, and so they couldn't retrieve the document. And so you answered that already. And again, in relation to this, you know, documentation, because we need to revise documents, and knowing for a fact that we have so limitations right now, is it advisable that we revise our documents, say, improve our controls, so we revise our documents to attain customer satisfaction before the audit?
Okay, I go back to this answer, you know, that there is no passing and failing in auditing. If your audit, if your certification audit will be next week, you don't have time anymore. Okay, so you look at your timeline. If you wanted to revise your documentation, and it's only one documentation, and your audit will be in September, I think you have time. But if you think that you have a set of documentation, because sometimes one procedure is linked to other procedures, and you will need a set of documentation to be changed accordingly. Okay, again, you need to set your timeline. Okay, and this is an action plan. So my advice to you, you create an action plan, show it to your to your auditors, show it to your auditors, and tell them, okay, these are all in the pipeline for revision. Okay, we have identified all these weaknesses, and these are already planned for my revision. If you think that it will not be in time for your certification audit, you know, the full revision, so you can do that. You can create this master plan and your action plan in order for you to define your timeline for completion. That is acceptable.
Thank you for that, Ms. Mae. That clarifies the question. While we're talking already about remote audit, who will determine these options, whether it's going to be remote or on-site?
The certifying body. Because the certifying body, okay, we have this document. Remember, I've shown you, I think my third slide is about the mandatory document from International Accreditation Forum. Okay, so if you are binded with accreditation, the certification body will have that procedure for remote auditing. And there is a criteria whether it's 100% remote, partial remote, which area in the scope of your certification can be audited remotely. So in Bureau Veritas, we have this remote audit procedure, okay? And then it's approved by the local technical manager. So for us, we have that. And there are certain scope where we can allow to have 100% remote audits. And there are some that I call it remote plus. Okay, so document control. Oh, okay, I think it is coming to the last few slides. Okay, so the last one is a performance evaluation through your internal audit. Okay, so if you know your process, you will have a very, very good, effective internal audit process. Why? Because your audit will be better than the external audits. Since you know your process, the only thing is that the external auditors, they know the standard. But you still need to know the standard, isn't it? Right? So that means you are better than us because you know your process. We don't know your process, but we know the standard. Can you learn the standard? Yes, you can. You can you can enroll to an internal audit training. Yeah, John can. Yeah, John is a very, very good internal auditor trainer. Yeah. So when I sit partially, you know, yeah. So you see, I pick up a little bit, you know, from your training. Yeah. Okay, so internal audit, effective internal audit process is necessary in order for you to have confidence to present your organization to your external body. You can also outsource this process, you know, if you do not have enough resources for this. Yeah, it's allowed. Okay?
Got it. Thank you, Ms. Mae.
Yeah, okay, improvement. Please take this very seriously. Sometimes in the Section 10 of the ISO 9000, Section 10 of ISO 9000, it talks about improvement, you know, but somehow we address that in just a simple statement, oh, we address this. How do you address that? But to me, when in my experience in auditing, you know, this is something that sometimes we don't pay attention too much to this. Yeah, but actually in your implementation of continual improvement, you can make use of, remember the kappa and the effectiveness and the lessons learned. These are the very, very source of information and very, very source of actions when you can instill improvement in your organization. Any gaps that has been detected, you know, in the provision of your products and services, customer complaints, result of internal audits, non-conformities that is raised by anyone, customer audit, internal audit, these are all sources of improvement that you can take very, very seriously, and you can record, and it can become part of your organizational knowledge. All right, so I think adjourn. Yeah, I have answered some of your questions. Yeah, but if you still have some questions that needs to be answered right now, you can stay on. If not, then I pass the floor to you, John.